Hi, my name's Kayleigh and I'm an arts tutor with South Lanarkshire Leisure and Culture. Today with our acrylics we're going to be doing a still life using some fruits, and we're going to do it in a tonal underpainting. So a tonal underpainting is just using your black and white paints and creating a couple of mid-tones, and we look at where all our shadows and highlights are. So it's a good way of learning about shadows and highlights, but it's also a great way to start off your painting no matter what it is. You can use it to be an undertone painting for acrylics, for oils, or even if you just want to do a full grayscale photo. So yeah, let's get started. So we're going to do a tonal underpainting today, and I've got some fruit in front of me which is going to be really good for drawing, and the only materials I've got are really simple. We've got some white paint, black paint, a couple of different size paintbrushes, palette knife for mixing. If you don't have a palette knife then you can use just brushes anyway, a little pot of water and a pencil and a rubber. I'm using acrylic paper, but if you use a thick cartridge paper it should probably hold it as well if you're just doing trials. Canvas will work as well obviously too if you're doing a more finished picture. So to start off with, we're just going to have a little look at our still life here. I've got an apple which is really good for shine. You can see a really bright highlight on it and then a shadow down here, plus your kind of cast shadow at the side as well, which is nice. To contrast the shine, we've got a banana which is quite matte. The banana's got lots of different colours in it, so you've got that kind of dark brown showing through, but also the bright yellow, plus some highlights and shadows on it, so it's a wee bit of a challenge to make sure that you get that right. And I'm all about challenges. And then we've got a tangerine which I've cut open because you can see lots of different details in it. You've got little shiny reflections from the light all the way through the sort of juicy or fleshy bit of the tangerine, and then you've got this more matte bright bit right the way around the outside, with you can see a little bit of the peel here as well. You've also got a bit of shadow coming underneath, which is going to keep it really dark under there, which will be good for our tonal underpainting. The background, I've just used a bit of fabric which has got some lovely natural creases in it. I've not gone too overboard with styling it in any way because we don't want to, we just want a nice background rather than anything too fancy. If you're setting up a still life, try and choose an odd number of objects. Try and choose some contrasting textures and contrasting colours, and your background should be a complementary colour to all your fruit as well, so whatever's opposite in your colour wheel. I'm going to start off by just drawing our still life first. When you're drawing it, just have a little look in terms of proportions. We want to make sure that the orange is sitting slightly higher than the middle of the banana, that the apple's a little bit higher than the orange, and we've got this little bit of height as well at the side of the banana. So just sketch it in roughly. The good thing about sketching with acrylics is that you can just paint right over the top. So you can be as sketchy as you like, make as many mistakes as you like, and then it's just easily covered. So mine might be at a wee slightly different angle from what you can see, but not too far off, just in case you think, why has she got that shadow over there? So I've now got a rough drawing of where all my items are in my still life. The next thing we're going to do is just mix up some mid-tones using our whites and blacks. So separate your colours into 4 sections, and you're going to keep one of them white, one of them black, and then you're going to have 2 mid-tones in between. And a mid-tone is just a shade of grey. In this case, it can also be other kind of colours as well, but in this case we're going to go grey. Now what to do is always start with your white first and add your black to it, because the black is just so potent. it'll make everything really dark. So you want to start with white. I'm just going to wipe off my white paint and add a little bit of black into it. And you're going to add a little bit of black to one and a lot more black to the other. And you're going to add a little bit of black to one and a lot more black to the other. And you're going to add a little bit of black to one and a lot more black to the other. And you're going to add a little bit of black to one and a lot more black to the other. And you're going to add a little bit of black to one and a lot more black to the other. And you're going to add a little bit of black to one I'm going to mix the lighter one first. You might need to add more white into this once you've mixed it. The thing is, you just never know how it's really going to turn out unless you start doing some calculations, which isn't the fun of colour mixing. The fun is trying it all out, and the more you do it, the more you get something that you're looking for. So there we've got a lovely light grey. I am a messy painter, so this will be everywhere and everything will be mixed in with one another, but I'm going to try my hardest to keep it separate. I'm going to mix in, hopefully this will be a little bit darker. It's probably not as dark as I want it, so I'm going to add a wee bit more black into it. Just keep adding a little bit as you go. It's easier to add than to take away. I'm going to add a wee bit more actually again. There we go, that's roughly what I'm looking for. You get two mid-tones. Yours could be totally different. You could go like really, really dark for this mid-tone if you wanted. But try and stick to just the 4 shades there rather than having loads and loads of different ones, because that's part of the challenge today, is to really look at where your lights and darks are. So I think that'll do me just now. Try and mix more than you need, because remixing the colour is going to be a little bit harder. There's a good chance I'm going to have to remix one at some point, so you'll probably see that happen, but if you can mix lots. Right, now we need to work out in our still life, which is in colour, where all the blacks, whites and greys go. I'm going to start off with a kind of smaller brush, and the first thing I'm going to do is mark in my darker bits. You could go either way, but I'm thinking since I've got a white sheet of paper, marking in the darker areas is where I'm going to go with this. Now, it feels a little bit out of the ordinary to go in so dark, especially with a shadow, but trust the process. This is a really good way to inform your colour painting. And although it's maybe like a lot lighter or less opaque or transparent, that's okay. We want this being really bold to start off with. This could also be the start of an oil painting. You can paint on top of acrylics with oils. So if you wanted this as an underpainting, it's a really good way to do it. It's almost like a primer. Although I would say you need to prime your paper as well. Now the shadow in this one, there's a little bit of a kind of curve going down where that is. They are doing building works outside today, so please excuse the noise. Then there's a little bit in the middle here. A little bit underneath the banana here. So you're just looking, keep looking back at your still life and just working out where the darkest parts are. Be really bold with your black here. I know sometimes in acrylic paintings it's like, don't use black if you can help it. I do agree with that sometimes, but this is your opportunity. Let's see, maybe the top of that's quite dark. Shadow behind there. I'm going to be painting all over the background as well, so if there's little bits that are incorrect, don't worry about them, we'll be going over that anyway. And I should have said, I'm just going straight into the paint. There's no water in my brush or anything. I'm just going straight in. See, actually, there's a shadow on the side of that apple that's really dark, right the way down there. I'm just going to go for it. You can actually start to see the picture come together, which is, I always find it quite surprising when you see it. You think that's never going to work, and then you start to see all these little dark bits, and it will work. So inside the sort of fleshy area of the tangerine, there are a few quite dark spots. The majority of it's light, but you're trying to make things darker than they are at the moment, just so you can work out your shadows and your highlights. Even on the banana, I would say there's a darker area about there. And coming down and then at the back. I've just noticed my apple's maybe not quite where it should be in relation to my banana here. I'm going to go with it. And just rub this wee bit out, bring it down. It's funny when you look at something for so long, you sometimes don't notice your mistakes. Better. Right, I'm going to wash my brush, get it as clean as I can. Now, I'm going to move down the scale and go to this mid-grey here. So now I'm going to look at the bits that I kind of wanted to paint black, but it just wasn't right, it wasn't dark enough. So I'm going to go mid, I'm going to start painting that in before you see that. So this side of the banana is definitely darker than this part. Some in turn to it being a darker colour, and some in turn to the light really shining on that bit there. So I'm taking this bit, the sort of mid-grey. Now with acrylics you can paint over the top of things, so it might be that I decide to put a highlight in later on that sits on top of this grey, but at the moment I'm just going to mark this in. Another way of doing this is you can just choose one mid-tone to cover your whole page with, and then go in and do your darks and lights over the top. But personally, I quite like just kind of starting dark. It's more of a challenge. There's a wee bit of a highlight going down there, so I'm going to leave that bit. Might even come back and add in some dark bits there. I think try and move about your painting a little bit as well. Don't stick to the same bits too much. And then this bit of the apple down here, definitely a bit darker. Now, I'm being quite rough and ready with this at the moment. Might be that I come in and change things after. So looking at this fleshy area, or looking at the orange as a whole, or a tangerine even, there is brightness and there's quite a lot of darkness, but overall this white area, kind of light orange yellow colour around the side, is a lot lighter than most of the areas in here. So what I'm going to do is go in quite dark just now, and then I can lighten up all the little highlights over the top. So it seems a wee bit wild to be just making everything really dark just now, but it's a good way to just go over the top, all the little areas in between as well. Actually, I'm seeing little bits that I'm going to be adding a wee bit more black to as well. I'll probably get a finer brush and go in and do these bits in the middle, a little bit more detail afterwards. But I'm not going to get too caught up in it just now because I want to make sure that I've got my whole picture done before I go in and do that. Just going to paint in this bit of the banana as well, actually, a wee bit darker. Now this bit of the tablecloth is definitely darker as well. So you can start getting your background in if you like. You can do the whole foreground first and then add your background as well, that is an option. I kind of just do little bits as I go. I don't have a huge kind of process to what I do first and things. When you're using acrylics, you can afford to do that. And you're not trying to blend your colours, you're not trying to blend the black into the grey or anything. When you actually come, as this is an underpainting, well, you can leave it as just black and white painting, but there's a good chance you'll be putting colour on top of this. So when you put your colour on, you can definitely blend your colours to make it much softer and smoother, realistic. But as an underpainting, you're just looking for those bold greys coming through. Now I'm going to put a little mid-tone right the way around the edge of my tangerine here. Kind of got that bit in. Just keep reflecting back, see what you can see. It's quite a big mid-tone up there. A lot of this is quite light coming down, but you've got these sort of folds that are darker. I've got a real highlight going right the way along here. So there's a highlight going right the way over the top, and then at the sort of crease at the back as well. Probably right up the top. Should probably use a bigger brush for this, but I've started now. If you don't like your paint dragging so much, so it's kind of doing a dry brush thing when the paint runs out on the brush, and I know some people really dislike that. It's not always a nice feeling to paint with. I don't mind it, to be honest. I'd rather have the thick paint, but you can always add a little bit of water and it will pull a little bit easier and go on a little bit smoother. But try not to add too much water. You want to avoid the blending situation. When you start adding water, it's very easy to start blending. Right, I'm going to wash my brush and we're going to move on to our next mid-tone. So this one is pretty much anywhere that's really light, but you don't want to be adding white in. If you feel like white's too bright for that area. I'm going to go a little bit like this. If you're struggling to see where the darks and lights are, if you're looking at this going, how is she seeing where the darks and lights are? I don't understand. Then try squinting your eyes. And when you squint your eyes at it, you do see the lights and darks start to jump out. I probably went a bit light round there, to be honest. I'm going to go back in and do that a bit darker, I think. And this bit's definitely white. Definitely got a white bit around here. Right, I'm going to go right the way around the edge here with this, but I probably will go in with a little bit of white over the top on some areas. In the middle here, there's a few lighter tones even. I'm being quite uniformed with this at the moment, but there will reach a point where I end up with more detail going in and out. I think up at the top here, there's a wee bit of a highlight there, maybe at the shoulder. So I'm just paint over the top with a lot of this as well. Now the background is hardly going to have any white in it at all. It'll just be the little highlights. When you do paint a still life or portrait or anything at all, you want your darkest and lightest bits to be in your foreground rather than in your background at all. You will have little bits here and there, but overall you want to try and keep it as the darkest and lightest bits where you're actually wanting to draw the viewer's attention. And I'm being quite rough and ready again with the background. Just going to try and get a bit of colour in. Not colour, sorry. Mid-tones in. I don't tend to work in a grayscale, I love colour. So I find this quite challenging to make myself stick to these. Can't have any colours near me or they'll end up on the page. Try not to end up a wee bit of a white glow round about the tops of my fruit. Just make sure everything's blending in. Not blending in, kind of put in, rather than any glows showing up. When we put our white on, you're going to really see things jump out. Because at the moment I've only left one little space for the white. Okay, I'm going to stop there with that mid-tone and I'm going to go in with my white now. So I'm just cleaning my brush. And let's get some white on. You're going to really start to see it come alive. And then we can always go back in with our other colours as well. So you might, once you've put in the white, you might think you need to change that a little bit. But the white is the best part. My brush is still a wee bit wet there, so I'm going to dry it off. Because you want it as thick a paint as possible, not diluted in any way. Even the areas I left white, I'm going to put in a little bit. Now, the thicker the paint you use, the more texture you're going to get as an underpainting as well, which is quite nice because you start to see brush strokes shine through. I quite like that. It is a wee bit take the wheel, but some people not quite as much, especially if you've got something smooth that you're doing. You maybe don't want to see brush strokes coming through. For example, the apple is very smooth, so if you're wanting to keep that smooth surface, try and keep your brush strokes as smooth as this sort of grey is, rather than a sort of lumpy impasto white that I'm putting on at the moment. Kind of brightest bit is definitely right here. I've got a highlight. Now the banana. It's got a lovely highlight coming right the way up into here. Actually, do you know what? I'm going to paint this whole bit white because I think that's lighter. You are allowed to change your mind. Oh. I'm putting a couple of wee highlights in my background as well. And banana here. Just a couple of wee hints of brightness, I would say, that are worthy of the white. See, this is all quite light over here, but there's only a few really white bits. Now, the white and the orange, try and get a fine point on this brush. There are so many parts that are really, really bright. So I think I need more of a mid-tone underneath here because you can see a bit of the skin. There's the white, really bright in here. Some of my white's not quite as thick as others, so I'm just going over to make it brighter. Now, it's getting there. It is definitely getting there. It's probably time to look at adding in a wee bit more detail now. So I've got my main patches of colour in, not colour, paint, coming through. There are a few more wee highlights in here actually I'm going to put in. But I'm going to move back to adding in some mid-tones where I see that I need more detail. And then I can come back to my white afterwards as well. If I've got more white bits that I need to add in, especially in this sort of centre bit. Just make sure you wash your brush really well in between to avoid having too many nice blends in it. You want it to look a bit blocky. Put more of a mid-tone at the bottom here. well, taking the mid-tone, the darker mid-tone down the bottom here, and that's helped that white highlight a little bit there. Sometimes it's an idea to have a different brush for every colour as well. It stops you having any blends going on that shouldn't be there. Take that up a wee bit in there. A wee bit more under here. It's not a completely straight line right the way along, there's a wee bit of darkness there. And a little bit behind. So you can see the more I'm adding in, the more it's starting to become a wee bit more realistic. And just keep working at it, keep working at adding in wee bits here and there. And try not to have any gaps in your paint, if possible. If anything's looking too blocky, like I tend to go in quite round with things to start off with, whereas they maybe need to be a bit more realism added in. Now's your chance. It's a bit watery. I'm going to dry my brush again. Change my mind with banana again. I think there's definitely a highlight and then this mid-tones in the middle. Yeah, I like that better. It's definitely closer. Whereas I think the back of it is a wee bit darker down there as well. I'm going to go back in with that one and bring that down. There we go. So the more you work at this, the more you're going to see it start to come together. It is a wee bit of an unusual way to sort of start painting if you're used to using colour, but it can be so helpful if you're kind of struggling to see where light bits and dark bits are. It's really informative. Okay, I think I'm going to kind of stop where I am soon, because I don't want to go too far. I want to still keep it that I'm keeping in the really, really light bits and getting rid of the really dark bits. It's easy to sort of overwork this stage of it, because you're not going to see all these little bits sort of come through when you've actually got colour on top. If you're actually just going to keep it as a black and white picture, then by all means keep adding. Because even little bits of white are going to make a big difference here and there. But I think it's now time to add your colour on top. When you do add your colour on top, it is just a case of using this to help you. This is just there as a guide. You don't have to use, for example, if you were doing your apple, you don't have to mix 4 types of red or 4 types of orange or 4 types of yellow for the banana or anything. It is just there to try and help your sort of darks and lights rather than completely copy over the top. So you can have those lovely blends going on with your colours. Add in a few more little bits of black just to top it off. You see it quite dark. This is when I can't stop. I'm like, I'll just stop now, and then I keep going. Always do it. Right, okay, I'm going to stop there. It's now time to add some colour to it. I'll leave you to kind of work that out yourself, and next week we'll be going into more detail on how to use colour over the top of acrylics. But hopefully that's been helpful in terms of working out your shades and your highlights and really making you look at a still life in a little bit more detail than we have already. Thanks for joining me today with our tonal underpainting. I've now trimmed mine down. I've just cut off all the edges, and now it is ready to add our colour layer on top. So hopefully this will help you inform your either acrylic or your oil painting now. See you next time.